I'm Gary, 59 years old, and I've built my business from nothing into something I'm truly proud of. For most of my life, my son Jordan was my world. We were inseparable until he met Amanda. Things changed fast after that. Last month, I was told I wasn't welcome at their wedding, yet somehow still received a $90,000 bill for their Italian celebration and honeymoon. Jordan's note read, "Be thankful I let you contribute." Where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had family take you for granted, and stick around to see how I flipped my son's fairy tale upside down. I wasn't always successful. 35 years ago, I was working 3 jobs just to make rent in my tiny one-bedroom apartment. Days at the construction site, evenings stocking shelves, weekends doing handyman work, whatever it took. I saved every penny I could to start my first small contracting business. Those early years taught me the value of hard work, persistence, and earning your way in life. No shortcuts, no handouts. When my business finally gained traction, I expanded slowly and carefully. Building custom homes led to commercial projects, then to development deals. Now my company, Bradford Construction, employs over 200 people and handles major projects across 4 states. I'm not showing off. I just want you to understand that everything I have came through decades of sweat and sacrifice. Jordan came into my life during those building years. His mother, Lisa, and I divorced when he was only 3. We married too young and grew apart, though we managed to remain respectful co-parents. I fought for joint custody and made sure that even during the busiest times building my company, Jordan knew he was my priority. Those early years were special. On my weekends with Jordan, I'd take him to job sites where he'd wear his tiny hard hat and boots. By age 7, he could identify different types of wood and name every tool in my truck. We had our rituals. Saturday morning pancakes. I'd shape like animals fishing trips to Lake Marshall, and our annual camping trips, where I taught him to build fires and identify constellations. As a single dad running a growing business, I made sure Jordan understood the connection between effort and reward. When he wanted an expensive bike at 10, we made a deal I'd match whatever he earned doing chores and helping neighbors with yard work. He worked all summer and was so proud when we finally bought that bike together. That moment, seeing the satisfaction in his eyes knowing he'd earned it, still makes me smile. Jordan was a bright kid with natural talent for both academics and sports. In high school, he captained the debate team and played varsity baseball. I never missed a debate tournament or game, even rescheduling important business meetings to be there. I wanted him to have what I didn't, a father who showed up. When Jordan was accepted to Westmore University with a partial academic scholarship, I was bursting with pride. We'd planned for this. I'd been saving for his education since he was born. I covered his tuition, housing, and a reasonable monthly allowance. My only requirement was that he maintain good grades and get a part-time job to develop his work ethic and manage his own spending money. This is where things began to shift. Westmore is an excellent school, but it's also known for its wealthy student body. Jordan's roommate Bradley came from old money. His family had buildings named after them on campus. Soon, Jordan was being invited to ski trips, spring breaks in tropical villas, and weekends at family estates. During his sophomore year, I noticed changes. Jordan's calls became less frequent, and when we did talk, he'd mention restaurants where dinners cost more than my weekly food budget at his age. His part-time job at the campus bookstore disappeared. He said Bradley's father had offered him an internship that seemed to involve very little work and generous pay. I tried to have conversations about financial responsibility. "Jordan, I'd say, I'm happy to provide for your education, but luxury trips and $500 dinners aren't part of that." He'd get defensive. "Dad, you don't get it. This is networking. These connections will be valuable for my future." By junior year, Jordan had his first credit card, something I advised against. "These are just convenience expenses, Dad, though," he'd assure me. "I'm handling it." But then came the call asking for help paying off a $5,000 balance. I paid it after a lengthy discussion about financial responsibility, but I had this sinking feeling that something fundamental was changing in my son. It was at a charity gala I sponsored for the Children's Hospital when Jordan, home for winter break during his senior year, met Amanda. I'd brought Jordan as my guest, hoping to introduce him to some business contacts before his graduation. Amanda was there with her parents, the Crawfords, who were fixtures in local society circles. The Crawfords carried themselves with the confidence of generational wealth. William Crawford introduced himself as a private investor, while his wife Elaine chaired several prestigious charity boards. They were polished, well-connected, and clearly comfortable in their social position. Amanda was beautiful, poised, and immediately zeroed in on Jordan. I observed their first interaction, her hand lingering on his arm as she laughed at his jokes, the way she mentioned her family's summer home in the Hamptons and winter chalet in Aspen within minutes of meeting him. I tried to keep an open mind. Jordan was clearly smitten, calling her the most amazing girl he'd ever met, but I couldn't ignore the red flags. When Jordan brought her to dinner at my home, Amanda spent more time examining my furniture and art than engaging in conversation. She asked pointed questions about my business revenue and seemed disappointed when I kept details vague. "Your home is so cozy," she said with a tight smile. "I guess that's the charm of self-made success. Our family estate has been in the family for generations. There's something about that history you just can't replicate." I bit my tongue and tried to find common ground. When I mentioned my volunteer work with Habitat for Humanity, Amanda dismissed it with, "That's sweet. My family prefers to make impact through our foundation. Last year, we donated enough to have the new hospital wing named after us." After she left, I carefully broached the subject with Jordan. "She seems very focused on status," I suggested. Jordan immediately became defensive. "You're judging her without knowing her dad. Amanda's family has connections that could be really valuable for my future." That phrase, "valuable for my future," started appearing in Jordan's vocabulary with alarming frequency. I wondered what happened to the boy who took pride in earning his own way. Jordan and Amanda's relationship progressed at warp speed. By spring of his senior year, they were inseparable. Jordan started spending holidays with the Crawfords rather than coming home. His social media showed a transformation. Suddenly, he was posting from yacht parties and private clubs wearing clothes I knew he couldn't afford on his allowance. 3 months after graduation, Jordan called to announce their engagement. No prior discussions about his plans, no traditional ask for my blessing, just a fait accompli. "We're thinking about a June wedding next year," he informed me. "Amanda's always dreamed of getting married in Italy." I invited them to dinner to celebrate, hoping to reconnect with my son and perhaps find some common ground with my future daughter-in-law. The evening was tense. Amanda dominated the conversation with wedding plans already in motion, speaking about venues that cost more than most people's homes. "We've secured Villa Montecito in Tuscany," she announced. "It's where the Vanderbilts hosted their daughter's wedding. Getting it for our dates required some strings pulled by Daddy's business associate on the Tuscany Tourism Board." When I asked about their financial plans for this extravaganza, Amanda smiled coldly. "Well, traditionally, the bride's family handles the ceremony and the groom's family covers the rehearsal dinner and honeymoon. But since we're planning a 5-day celebration, we thought we'd break tradition and split things more evenly." Jordan sat silently studying his plate as Amanda continued outlining costs that made my head spin. I carefully mentioned that I'd be happy to contribute a reasonable amount, but perhaps they might consider something less extravagant. Amanda's expression hardened. "Jordan told me you were generous. I guess successful means different things to different people." My son still wouldn't meet my eyes. After they left, I called Lisa Jordan's mother to see if she'd heard the wedding news. "Gary," she sighed, "I've met Amanda 3 times, and each time she's managed to work into conversation how their family summer home is bigger than my entire property. Something's not right with that girl or her family." Lisa shared her concerns that Amanda seemed to be driving a wedge between Jordan and both of his parents. "Have you noticed how he barely calls anymore? And when he does, it's always on speakerphone with her right there?" I had noticed. I'd also noticed that Jordan had stopped bringing up our traditions, like our annual fishing trip that we'd never missed, until this year when he claimed Amanda had scheduled a tasting with wedding caterers on the same weekend. My business partner and closest friend Thomas noticed the change too. "Gary," he said during our weekly racquetball game, "I've watched you raise that boy to have a backbone and values. What happened? I didn't have a good answer. But my concerns grew when Jordan called asking for a temporary loan to put a deposit on an apartment in Amanda's preferred building, a high-rise with doormen and a concierge where the rent was triple what he could afford on his entry-level salary at a marketing firm." "Jordan, that's not sustainable," I told him. "Why not find something within your actual budget?" "Dad, you don't understand. Amanda's used to a certain lifestyle. All her friends live in buildings like this. It would be embarrassing for her to live somewhere. Basic." I reluctantly provided the deposit but had a pit in my stomach about where this was heading. Jordan had never cared about impressing people with money before. The engagement party hosted by the Crawfords was an over-the-top affair at the Westshire Country Club. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, and a 10-piece orchestra played to a room full of people I'd never met. I noticed William Crawford working the room, mentioning his connections to senators and CEOs while dropping hints about exclusive investment opportunities to anyone who would listen. During a quiet moment at the bar, one of William's business associates, slightly loosened by scotch, muttered to me, "Beautiful party. Wonder who's actually paying for it, though." Between us, Crawford's been shopping the same exclusive investment opportunity for 2 years now. Word is, they're leveraged to the hilt. That comment triggered my business instincts. Over the next few weeks, I made some discreet inquiries about the Crawford family finances. What I discovered was troubling. Multiple tax liens, a pattern of moving assets between shell companies, and rumors of investors trying to recoup losses. The Crawfords were maintaining appearances while standing on financial quicksand. I debated whether to share this information with Jordan. In the end, I decided to tread carefully, inviting him to lunch alone, something that had become increasingly rare. "Jordan," I said after catching up, "I'm concerned about the financial expectations being set for this wedding. Have you and Amanda created a budget? Are you discussing your financial values and goals?" His response was dismissive. "Dad, Amanda's family knows how these things work. It's important to them, and to me, that our wedding reflects a certain standard. I don't expect you to understand." "Jordan, I understand more than you think. I've built a successful business by knowing the difference between value and show. I'm worried that—" He cut me off. "If this is about money, Dad, just say how much you're willing to contribute and we'll work with that. Amanda says her parents' friends are expecting a proper celebration." I left that lunch feeling like I was losing my son to people who valued appearance over substance. As wedding plans progressed, the scope and scale continued to expand. What started as a destination wedding in Tuscany evolved into a 5-day celebration across multiple exclusive venues. The guest list ballooned from an initial 60 close friends and family to over 300 people, most of whom I'd never heard Jordan mention. Amanda had hired Valentina Ricci, a celebrity wedding planner whose clients included film stars and European royalty. Each week brought news of another extravagant addition: a pre-wedding yacht cruise on the Mediterranean, a private concert by an Italian tenor, custom welcome packages for guests that included premium wine and personalized gifts. I received occasional updates from Jordan, always by email rather than our previous phone calls. Each message seemed more like a press release than a personal communication from my son, filled with details about curated experiences and bespoke elements that made the wedding sound more like a luxury brand launch than a heartfelt celebration. When I managed to get Jordan on the phone to discuss the escalating plans, his responses were clipped and defensive. "The Vineyard Villa alone cost $30,000 for the weekend, Dad. That's actually a favor price because Amanda's family knows the owners." "Jordan, that's an extraordinary amount for a venue. Have you and Amanda considered how these expenses align with your actual financial situation?" His reply was telling. "Amanda says investments in social capital pay dividends for decades. Her family has always done things at this level." I tried a different approach. "Son, I'm happy to contribute $15,000 toward your wedding. That's a generous gift that respects my values about money and what a wedding should be. Beyond that, you and Amanda need to make choices based on what you can afford." The silence on the phone was deafening. Finally, Jordan responded, "I'll have to discuss this with Amanda. She was expecting more substantial support." I held firm. "Jordan, I raised you to understand the difference between needs and wants and to live within your means. This wedding seems to have lost sight of what's truly important, celebrating your commitment to each other, not impressing people with extravagance." The conversation ended awkwardly, with Jordan promising to call back after talking with Amanda. That call never came. Instead, I received a terse email outlining revised expectations for my contribution, now specified as covering the rehearsal dinner estimated at $20,000, plus the honeymoon accommodations at a private villa in the Maldives, another $30,000. The email had clearly been written or dictated by Amanda, though it came from Jordan's account. My growing unease about the situation led me to reach out to Thomas, who had known Jordan since he was a boy. We met for drinks at our usual spot, a low-key steakhouse away from the flashy downtown establishments. "Gary," Thomas said after hearing the latest developments, "this doesn't sound like the Jordan you raised. Something's not right when a kid who once spent a summer working for a bike suddenly expects a 6-figure wedding paid by others." I don't recognize him anymore, Thomas. It's like he's been absorbed into Amanda's world and forgotten everything I taught him. Thomas leaned forward. Have you considered that this might be more about the Crawfords than about Amanda? From what you've told me, they're keeping up appearances while swimming in debt. A wealthy father-in-law would be quite the safety net. The thought had crossed my mind. I'm not sure Jordan sees it. He's completely enchanted by their lifestyle and social connections. What are you going to do about the wedding contribution? Thomas asked. Stand my ground. $15,000 is generous and appropriate. If that's not good enough, they'll need to adjust their plans. Thomas nodded approvingly. The boy needs a reality check before he drowns in expectations he can't possibly meet. Little did I know that the wedding contribution would soon become moot. The following week, Jordan asked to meet for dinner. I suggested his favorite steakhouse from childhood, hoping the familiar setting might bring back some of the connection we'd lost. Jordan arrived late, looking uncomfortable. After awkward small talk about work and weather, he finally got to the point. Dad, there's something I need to discuss about the wedding. He paused, studying the tablecloth. Amanda and I have been talking with the wedding planner about the final guest list and, well, we've had to make some difficult decisions. I waited, sensing what was coming. The thing is, Amanda feels that your approach to success and your views on money are very different from her family's tradition. She's concerned that some of your comments might cause tension or discomfort with her family and their friends. I kept my voice steady. What exactly are you trying to say, Jordan? He finally looked up, though not quite meeting my eyes. Amanda thinks it would be better if you didn't attend the wedding. She says your presence might overshadow their family's hosting and could create awkward moments. The restaurant noise faded away as I processed what my son was saying. Let me understand this clearly. I'm being uninvited from my only son's wedding because I might embarrass you with my self-made success and practical views on money. Dad, it's not like that. It's just that Amanda's family has a certain way of doing things, certain traditions and expectations. You and Mom aren't really familiar with those traditions. Your mother has also been uninvited, I asked, stunned. Jordan shifted uncomfortably. Amanda felt it would be awkward having divorced parents there. Her family is very traditional. Her parents have been married for 35 years and all their friends have intact families. The pain of this moment was almost physical. My son, the boy I'd raised, supported and loved unconditionally, was excluding me from one of the most important days of his life to satisfy his fiancée's superficial social concerns. Jordan, listen to yourself. You're banning your parents from your wedding to please people who care more about appearances than actual relationships. Is that really who you've become? Dad, you're making this about you. It's our wedding and we get to decide who attends. You're right about one thing. It is your decision, but decisions have consequences, including for our relationship. Jordan's expression hardened in a way I'd never seen before. Amanda said you'd try to manipulate me with guilt. She warned me you might threaten our relationship. In that moment, I realized how completely Amanda had come between us. My son was now interpreting my natural parental concern through her distorted lens. I'm not threatening anything, Jordan. I'm simply stating a fact. When you exclude your father from your wedding, it changes things. I can't pretend it doesn't hurt or that it's normal. The dinner ended shortly after, with Jordan leaving in a huff after I declined to discuss my financial contribution further. Since I'm not welcome at the celebration, my contribution will need to be reconsidered as well, I told him. As I paid the bill, I felt a hollow ache in my chest. The son who once proudly worked a summer for a bicycle was now willing to discard his father to maintain social appearances with people who measured worth by pedigree rather than character. I was spending a quiet weekend at my lake house, the same one where Jordan and I used to fish and build campfires, when the email arrived. The subject line read, "Wedding and honeymoon expenses, urgent attention required." Opening it, I found myself staring at a detailed spreadsheet with itemized costs for both the wedding and honeymoon. The grand total at the bottom, $90,000. Not a request or a proposal, an invoice complete with payment instructions and a due date 3 weeks away. The accompanying message from Jordan was brief and cold. As discussed, these are the expenses allocated to the groom's family. Payment details attached. Be thankful I let you contribute to our special celebration even if you can't attend. I read those words again, stunned by their entitlement and disconnection from reality. Be thankful I let you contribute, as if paying for his extravaganza was some kind of privilege rather than an obligation. The breakdown was staggering. Venue rental in Tuscany, $30,000. Rehearsal dinner at historic villa, $20,000. Honeymoon at exclusive resort in Maldives, $25,000. Private yacht charter for wedding party, $15,000. This wasn't a wedding budget, it was financial insanity. And for an event I wasn't even welcome to attend. I poured myself a scotch and walked out to the dock, sitting in the same chair where I'd taught Jordan to bait a hook and where we'd had so many heart-to-hearts over the years. The sunset over the lake usually brought me peace, but that evening it only highlighted what I'd lost. The next morning I called Thomas and asked him to meet me for breakfast at the diner near my office. I needed the perspective of someone who knew both Jordan and me well. He sent you an invoice. Thomas's eyebrows shot up after I showed him the email. For a wedding you're banned from attending, Gary, that's beyond entitled. It's delusional. I keep wondering where I went wrong, I confessed. How did the boy who understood the value of earning his way turn into someone who expects a blank check for a party I'm not invited to? Thomas shook his head. This isn't on you, Gary. Jordan's been seduced by a lifestyle and a family that measures worth by appearance rather than substance. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I hadn't decided yet. Part of me wanted to write the check just to maintain some connection with my son, hoping he'd eventually come to his senses. Another part recognized that enabling this behavior would only reinforce it. Later that day, Lisa called. Did you get the wedding bill too? She asked, her voice tight with anger. You received one as well. $25,000 for my share, she confirmed. For a wedding I'm not allowed to attend because I might remind people that divorce exists. Can you believe that? Lisa had remarried 5 years ago to a kind, sensible man named Robert. They lived modestly on their combined teacher salaries. $25,000 was a significant portion of their annual income. What are you going to do? I asked her. Robert and I discussed it. We're sending a card with a $500 check, a generous gift for a wedding we're not attending, and a note explaining that their expectations are unreasonable. What about you? I hesitated. I'm still deciding. Part of me worries that refusing will permanently damage my relationship with Jordan. Gary, Lisa said gently, that relationship is already damaged and not by you. Paying this bill won't fix it. It will just teach Jordan and Amanda that they can mistreat you and still access your wallet. After hanging up, I received a call from my sister Caroline. We weren't particularly close. She lived across the country, but Jordan had always been fond of his aunt. Jordan called asking if I received my wedding invitation, she began. When I said no, he seemed confused. Apparently I'm on the guest list, but you're not. What's going on, Gary? I explained the situation as objectively as I could. Caroline listened, then sighed heavily. This reminds me of what happened with cousin Michael's wife. Remember how she isolated him from the family 10 years later after she'd spent through his inheritance? She left him. By then he'd lost all his family connections. Her words sent a chill through me. You think that's what's happening with Jordan? I don't know for sure, but the pattern seems familiar. Have you looked into Amanda's family? Really looked? I admitted I'd done some initial investigation, but nothing comprehensive. Caroline suggested I dig deeper before making any decision about the wedding expenses. Taking her advice, I hired a discreet private investigator to look into the Crawford family finances. The report that came back a week later confirmed my suspicions and revealed even more troubling information. The Crawfords had been living far beyond their means for years. Their supposed family fortune had largely disappeared 2 generations ago, but they'd maintained appearances through increasingly complex financial maneuvers. William Crawford had left a trail of failed investment schemes, angry investors, and lawsuits settled quietly with non-disclosure agreements. 3 of their properties, including their main residence, were in pre-foreclosure status, temporarily halted only by legal delaying tactics. Most disturbing was the pattern the investigator uncovered. The Crawfords had previously arranged marriages for Amanda's 2 older sisters to wealthy men. In both cases, significant family emergency financial requests began within months of the weddings. One brother-in-law had parted with nearly $500,000 before filing for divorce. The other marriage had ended after the husband discovered that wedding funds he'd provided had been diverted to pay off Crawford family debts. The picture became clear. Jordan wasn't just marrying Amanda, he was being set up as the next financial safety net for a family drowning in debt and deception. As I sat in my home office reviewing these findings, I felt a complex mix of emotions: anger at the manipulation concern for Jordan's future, and a renewed determination to somehow protect my son, even if he didn't want my protection. But how could I intervene without pushing Jordan further away? A direct confrontation with evidence of the Crawford schemes would likely backfire, with Jordan dismissing it as jealousy or interference. I needed a strategy that might open his eyes without breaking our relationship completely, and I needed to respond to that $90,000 invoice, which now seemed less like a wedding expense and more like the first installment in a lifetime of financial exploitation. After several days of consideration, I scheduled meetings with 3 people whose advice I valued: my financial advisor, Martin, a family therapist named Dr. Reynolds, whom I'd consulted during difficult periods following my divorce, and Thomas, whose business acumen I trusted implicitly. Martin's financial perspective was clear. This isn't a gift, Gary. It's extortion. There's no obligation to pay for an event you're excluded from, and doing so sets a dangerous precedent. Dr. Reynolds took a more psychological approach. Your son is caught between his upbringing and the allure of status and acceptance. Simply refusing to pay might push him further into the Crawfords' influence. Consider a response that offers both a boundary and a path back to your values. Thomas was characteristically blunt. Hit them where it hurts, the wallet, but do it in a way that forces Jordan to think about the values you raised him with. Their combined insights helped me formulate a plan that was neither pure capitulation nor simple refusal, and it centered around something the Crawfords would never expect: the education fund I'd established for Jordan's future children. When Jordan was born, I opened an investment account with the intention of funding my future grandchildren's education. Every month for the past 35 years, I'd contributed to this fund, which had grown to just over $250,000 with careful management. I'd planned to surprise Jordan with this gift after the wedding, a way to help his future family without creating dependency. Now, this fund would become the centerpiece of my response to the wedding invoice. I crafted a careful letter to Jordan and Amanda. Rather than sending it electronically where it might be skimmed or dismissed, I had it professionally printed and delivered by courier to ensure it received proper attention. The letter began not with anger or accusation, but with reflection. Jordan, when you were 7 years old, you wanted a bicycle that cost $200, a significant amount at that time. Rather than simply buying it for you, I helped you earn it through chores and neighborhood jobs. Do you remember how proud you were riding that bike for the first time? You told me, "This is the best because I made it happen myself." That moment taught you something valuable about earning your way and the satisfaction that comes from achieving goals through your own efforts. As your father, one of my greatest responsibilities has been teaching you not just how to succeed, but how to define success itself. True success isn't measured by the extravagance of a wedding or the exclusivity of a honeymoon resort. It's built on integrity, self-reliance, and the strength of genuine relationships. I received your invoice for $90,000 for wedding and honeymoon expenses. This amount, for an event I'm explicitly told I'm not welcome to attend, represents not just a financial request, but a fundamental disconnect from the values I've tried to instill in you. My response is as follows. 1. I will provide a wedding gift of $5,000, a generous amount that respects both my desire to celebrate your marriage and my principles regarding financial responsibility. 2. This gift comes with no strings attached. How you use it is entirely your decision. 3. You should be aware, however, of something I've been saving for a different moment. Since your birth, I've maintained an education fund for your future children, my grandchildren. This fund currently contains $250,000 specifically designated for their educational needs. I had planned to surprise you with this after your wedding. However, given recent developments, I feel it's important for you to know about this fund now as you make decisions about your future. This fund will remain intact under the following conditions. You and Amanda demonstrate financial responsibility and independence in your married life. Our family relationships are maintained with mutual respect and consideration. Future grandchildren are raised with an understanding of earning their way rather than entitlement. Should these conditions not be met, I will redirect this fund to the scholarship foundation I've supported for underprivileged students who value education and demonstrate personal responsibility. Jordan, you stand at a crossroads. One path leads to a life of appearance-driven decisions and financial dependency. The other returns to the values of hard work, authenticity, and true security that I've always tried to model for you. The choice is yours, and I will respect whatever decision you make. My door remains open should you wish to discuss this further. With enduring love, Dad. I sealed the letter, sent it off, and waited, knowing that my response would likely trigger significant fallout. The reaction came swifter than expected. That evening, my phone exploded with calls and texts, first from Amanda, whose voicemail contained a stream of accusations about my manipulative tactics and conditional love. Jordan's messages started angry but evolved over several hours. The first simply read, "I can't believe you're using money to control me." By midnight, his tone had shifted. "We need to talk about this." Not over text. The most surprising response came from Amanda's mother, Elaine, who left a carefully worded message suggesting a family meeting to clear the air. The first indication that perhaps the Crawfords weren't as united as they appeared. I responded only to Jordan suggesting we meet alone at my house the following evening. He agreed, though his terse reply suggested he was coming to confront rather than reconcile. The knock on my door came at 7:30 the next evening, 30 minutes later than our agreed time. Jordan stood on my porch looking simultaneously defiant and uncertain, dressed in designer clothes I knew exceeded his monthly salary. "Come in," I said, simply stepping aside. "I've made coffee." We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd taught him to tie his shoes, build model airplanes, and later prepare for job interviews. The tension was palpable. "So," Jordan began, his voice clipped, "your letter made it pretty clear how you feel about my wedding and my choices." I took a moment before responding. "Actually, I think it made clear how I feel about being excluded from your wedding while simultaneously being handed a bill for $90,000. You've never liked Amanda," he accused. "From day one, you've judged her and her family." "This isn't about liking or not liking Amanda," I replied calmly. "It's about respect, boundaries, and the values I raised you with. Jordan, what happened to the young man who understood the pride in earning his way?" "I've grown up, Dad. I've realized there are different ways to succeed in this world. Amanda's family understands social capital and connections in ways you never have." I leaned forward. "Has it occurred to you to question why a family so focused on social capital needs $90,000 from a man they've deemed unsuitable to attend their social event?" Jordan's expression flickered with something. Doubt, perhaps. I pressed on. "Let me ask you something. Who made the decision that I shouldn't attend your wedding? Was that your idea or Amanda's?" He hesitated. We decided together that it would be best given the circumstances." "What circumstances, Jordan?" "The circumstance that I built my success through work rather than inheritance, or the circumstance that I believe in living authentically rather than maintaining appearances." Jordan shifted uncomfortably. "You don't understand Amanda's family traditions and expectations. Her parents have a certain standard for everything, including wedding guests. And yet they have no problem accepting money from guests they've excluded. Doesn't that strike you as inconsistent?" A flash of something, recognition perhaps, crossed Jordan's face before he masked it. "The wedding costs are just reality, Dad. Italian destination weddings are expensive." "Then perhaps people should plan weddings they can actually afford," I suggested. "That's what responsible adults do." Jordan's face flushed. "You think I'm irresponsible because I want a beautiful wedding? I think you're making choices that don't align with the values I taught you or your actual financial situation. And I think you're allowing someone else to dictate those choices, including the painful choice to exclude your parents." We went back and forth for nearly 2 hours. Gradually, Jordan's defensive posture began to soften as I asked questions rather than making accusations. I inquired about who had created the guest list, who had selected the extravagant venues, who had decided on the 5-day celebration format. With each answer, a pattern emerged that even Jordan couldn't ignore. Most major decisions had been made by Amanda with her parents' input, with Jordan simply agreeing to maintain peace. "Have you seen the final guest list?" I asked. "Generally, yes," he replied. "Out of the 300 guests, how many are your personal friends or family members?" Jordan thought for a moment. "Maybe 40 or 50. The rest are Amanda's family connections and their social circle." So you've agreed to a wedding where you'll know less than 20% of the guests at venues you didn't choose, with a price tag that would take you years to pay off on your current salary, and you've excluded your own parents from attending. Does that sound like the choice of someone in control of his own life? The question hung in the air between us. Jordan stared at his hands, silent. "Son," I said gently, "I'm not trying to come between you and Amanda. If you love her and want to build a life with her, I'll support that. But I won't support you surrendering your autonomy, your values, and your family relationships to satisfy someone else's social aspirations." Finally, Jordan looked up, his expression troubled. "The education fund for my future kids. You've really been saving for that all this time. Since the day you were born. I wanted to make sure your children would have opportunities, just as I tried to provide for you. And you'd really redirect it if you continue down a path of financial irresponsibility and family disconnection." "Yes. Because at that point, I'd have serious concerns about how those funds would actually be used." Jordan was quiet for a long moment. "I need to think about everything. This isn't simple." "Take all the time you need," I said. "But the wedding invoice isn't something I'm going to pay. I'll send a gift as I mentioned in my letter, but I won't fund an event I've been explicitly uninvited from." As Jordan prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "Dad, do you have any documentation about what you found regarding Amanda's family? The financial stuff?" I nodded. "In my office. Why?" I need to see for myself." I retrieved the investigator's report, removing only the details of how I'd obtained the information. Jordan took it without comment and left. 3 days passed without a word. Then on the 4th day, I received a text, "Can we talk tonight alone?" I agreed, suggesting the same time at my house. This time, Jordan arrived punctually. His appearance was noticeably different. Gone were the designer clothes, replaced by the kind of casual wear he'd favored before meeting Amanda. He looked tired, but somehow more present than he had in months. "The wedding's been scaled back," he announced without preamble as he entered. "We're still getting married, but in Napa Valley instead of Italy. 3-day event instead of 5. Guest list cut to 100. I nodded, waiting for him to continue. Amanda wasn't happy about the changes. Actually, she was furious. He ran a hand through his hair. Her parents even more so. But I told them I couldn't justify the expense, especially since... He hesitated. "Especially since what?" I prompted. "Since I verified some of the information in that report. I found documents in Amanda's father's home office when they thought I was using the bathroom. They've been hiding financial problems for years. The Italy vendors were already asking for deposits I couldn't track to any actual payments." I felt a complex mix of vindication and sadness. "I'm sorry, Jordan. That couldn't have been easy to discover." He gave a humorless laugh. "The worst part? When I confronted Amanda, she didn't even deny it. She just said everyone in their circle operates this way, keeping up appearances while moving money around. She acted like I was naive for being shocked." "How does this affect your relationship?" Jordan sank onto the couch, suddenly looking very young. "I don't know, I still love her, I think, but I feel like I've been seeing what I wanted to see, not what was actually there." "That's a painful realization," I acknowledged, "but an important one." "Dad," he said, meeting my eyes directly for the first time in months, "I'm sorry about excluding you from the wedding. That was wrong. I got caught up in Amanda's family's expectations and lost sight of what matters. If we go forward with this marriage, I want you there." The simple statement meant more than he could know. "Thank you, son. I'm not asking you to pay for the wedding," he added quickly. "We're adjusting plans to what we can reasonably afford. I want my dad at my wedding." We talked long into the night about money values, relationships, and finding a balance between accommodating a partner and maintaining one's core principles. For the first time in over a year, I felt like I was speaking to my son again, not a character playing a role in the Crawford social theater. As he was leaving, Jordan hugged me, something he hadn't done since before meeting Amanda. "That education fund," he said quietly, "I want to earn the right to use it for its intended purpose someday, not just by having kids, but by being the kind of father you've been." It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a significant step back toward the values I'd tried to instill in him. Whether his relationship with Amanda would survive these revelations remained to be seen, but Jordan himself seemed to be finding his way back to solid ground. The modified wedding took place 6 weeks later at a vineyard in Napa Valley. The scale was still generous, but not ostentatious, with around 90 guests in attendance, a more balanced mix of Jordan and Amanda's family and friends. I attended, as did Lisa and her husband Robert. The Crawfords maintained a polite but cool demeanor toward us. Amanda, to her credit, seemed to be making an effort to accept the scaled-back celebration, though her tight smile in photographs told its own story. Throughout the event, I observed Jordan carefully. He appeared present and engaged in a way he hadn't been during the months of extravagant planning. He sought out conversations with my longtime friends, who'd known him since childhood, reconnecting with the community that had helped raise him. The most telling moment came during Jordan's speech at the reception. After thanking guests for attending, he added something clearly unplanned. "I also want to thank my father," he said, looking directly at me. "Not just for being here today, but for teaching me that true value isn't found in appearances or possessions, but in integrity and genuine relationships. It's a lesson I nearly forgot, but one I'm grateful to carry into this marriage." Amanda's expression flickered with surprise, but she recovered quickly, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. After the wedding, Jordan and Amanda departed for a honeymoon, not to the private villa in the Maldives originally planned, but to a still lovely resort in Hawaii that Jordan had researched and booked himself. During their absence, I received an unexpected call from Elaine Crawford, Amanda's mother. "Gary," she began, her voice unusually hesitant, "I'm calling to open a dialogue. The wedding changes were difficult for us to accept initially, but William and I have been doing some reflection. Perhaps we've been too rigid in our expectations." The careful phrasing suggested this call wasn't entirely voluntary. "I appreciate that, Elaine. I hope we can all focus on supporting Jordan and Amanda's marriage rather than social appearances." "Yes, well," she continued, "Amanda mentioned that Jordan has been discussing financial boundaries and budgeting since they returned. She's finding it challenging. I wondered if perhaps you might have influenced this new perspective." I chose my words carefully. Jordan was raised to understand financial responsibility. If he's implementing those principles in his marriage, that's his choice as an adult. The conversation ended cordially, but with an undercurrent of tension. It was clear that the Crawfords were recognizing that their financial strategy regarding Jordan might not unfold as they'd hoped. 3 months after the wedding, Jordan asked to meet for coffee. He looked both tired and more mature somehow, with a new seriousness in his expression. "Amanda and I have been having some difficult conversations," he confided. "Her spending expectations don't align with our actual income. When I suggested a budget, she acted like I was deliberately trying to deprive her." "That's a challenging dynamic," I acknowledged. "How are you handling it?" "I've been firm about what we can afford. It's caused some arguments, but I've realized something important. I can love Amanda while still maintaining my own principles about money. I don't have to choose between her and my values." I felt a surge of pride at his insight. "That's a powerful realization, Jordan." "There's something else," he added. "Amanda's father approached me about investing in one of his ventures. He presented it as a family opportunity with guaranteed returns. After reviewing the prospectus, I declined. It wasn't financially sound." "How did that go over?" Jordan gave a rueful smile. "About as well as you'd expect. There was talk about family loyalty and exclusive opportunities. But I stood my ground." This was the test I'd been waiting for, whether Jordan would maintain his newfound clarity when faced with pressure from the Crawfords. His decision to decline the investment suggested he was indeed finding his way back to solid principles. Over the following months, Jordan and I rebuilt our relationship through regular dinners and occasional fishing trips to the lake house. He shared the ongoing challenges of his marriage, Amanda's resistance to financial boundaries, her parents' continued attempts to influence their decisions, the tension between the lifestyle she expected and what they could reasonably afford. 6 months after the wedding, Jordan suggested we meet for dinner, this time bringing Amanda. It was the first time she'd agreed to a meal with just the 3 of us since before the wedding. Amanda was subdued but polite, occasionally showing glimpses of the charm that had initially attracted Jordan. As dinner progressed, she surprised me by addressing our conflict directly. "I want to acknowledge that the wedding planning period was difficult," she said carefully. "My family has certain traditions and expectations that I was trying to uphold. Looking back, I can see how that created tension." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was more self-awareness than I'd previously seen from her. Jordan squeezed her hand encouragingly. "We've been working with a financial counselor," Jordan explained. "It's been helpful to have a neutral third party facilitate discussions about money and expectations." "That sounds like a wise approach," I replied, genuinely impressed by their maturity. "It hasn't been easy," Amanda admitted. "I was raised to believe that certain lifestyle elements were non-negotiable status markers. Learning to separate needs from wants has been challenging." The dinner ended on a cautiously positive note. While I harbored no illusions that Amanda had completely transformed her values, I saw evidence that she was making efforts to meet Jordan part way. Whether those efforts would last remained to be seen, but it was a start. 1 year after the wedding invoice incident, Jordan invited me to dinner at his and Amanda's apartment. I noticed immediately that they had moved from the luxury high-rise to a still nice but more reasonable building. The furnishings were tasteful but not ostentatious, a blend of Amanda's aesthetic preferences and Jordan's practical sensibilities. Over dinner, Jordan shared news of a career development. He had accepted a position with a smaller firm that aligned more closely with his values, even though it didn't carry the prestige of his previous role in Amanda's father's social circle. "It's work I believe in," he explained, "and the company culture supports work-life balance, which has become more important to us recently." He exchanged a meaningful look with Amanda, who smiled and placed her hand over her still flat stomach. "Dad," Jordan said, his voice thick with emotion, "we're expecting. You're going to be a grandfather in about 7 months." The news filled me with joy, not just for the grandchild to come, but for the journey Jordan had taken to reach this point. From the entitled young man who had banned me from his wedding while expecting me to pay for it, he had found his way back to the values of responsibility, authenticity, and family connection I had tried to instill. After dinner, while Amanda was making coffee, Jordan handed me a small wooden box I recognized immediately, the memory box I had given him on his 10th birthday, where he had kept special mementos from our father-son activities over the years. "I found this when we were moving," he said quietly. "It reminded me of who I really am and what actually matters." Inside were ticket stubs from baseball games we'd attended, the cork from the bottle we'd opened when he got his college acceptance letter, a fishing lure from our trips to the lake, and dozens of other small treasures that mapped our relationship. "I almost lost myself, Dad," he admitted. "Got caught up in a world of appearances and status that felt important at the time but was ultimately empty." "The important thing is that you found your way back," I told him. "That takes more courage and character than never straying in the first place." Before leaving, I shared my decision about the education fund. It would remain intact, growing for my future grandchild's benefit with Jordan and Amanda as responsible stewards. "We'll make sure your grandchild understands the value of earning their way," Jordan promised, "just like you taught me, even if I temporarily forgot the lesson." As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the journey of the past year. From the shocking wedding invoice to this moment of reconnection and renewal, we had traveled a difficult but ultimately redemptive path. The $90,000 bill that once symbolized entitlement and disconnection had become ironically the catalyst for my son's return to the values that truly mattered. Sometimes it takes a moment of crisis to illuminate what's truly important. I've shared this story because I believe many parents face similar challenges. Watching children being pulled toward materialism and status-seeking, struggling to maintain family connections in a world that often values appearance over substance. If you're facing such challenges, I encourage you to stand firm in your values while keeping the door open for reconciliation. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to help someone you love find their way back to what truly matters? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Thank you for listening, and remember, true wealth isn't measured in dollars but in the strength of our relationships and the integrity of our choices.